Will the streak of an underdog winning end this Saturday? Let's get right into this video. All right, guys, welcome back to another video. This is your boy CeeLo, and today we're talking about UFC 294. I know this event is going to be one of the best of the year, if not the best. We have very intriguing matchups, a couple of changes here and there, but nevertheless, we're getting some good fights this Saturday, early on Saturdays. So that's what we like to see. Wake up, drink some coffee, have some breakfast, and get right to watching fights. Right before we get into all of this, please give this video a big thumbs up. Comment down below your picks and predictions. Very heavy favorites in this fight card, but we're gonna get to see if we can get to some spots here. Without further ado, let's get right into the picks. We have the DraftKings player salaries pulled up here, but right before we get into UFC 294, I want to do a little quick recap of last week's video. We did have the cancellation with Lacerda and Chairez. Unfortunately, that fight fell through again. Don't think we'll ever see that again. We'll put that behind our rearview mirror and move on to a new fight for Chairez and Lacerda. On the pick for Adrian Yanez and Jonathan Martinez, I hope you guys took my advice, took the savings on the $200 for Jonathan Martinez because he put up a big score at that price tag. And nevertheless, for the main event, Yusuf and Barboza, whichever side you were on, obviously Barboza was the value side and scored massively. Both fighters scored massively. So if you stack that fight, good job. Props to you, because you must have had at least over 400 points total just in those two fights and whatever else you picked. So before we get into this fight card here, UFC 294, right off the bat, I do want to say the spend up options are not my favorite. You see Makhachev, you see Aliskerov, you see Basharat, and all pretty big favorites. So you're only going to want to mix and match one of those three if you have a strong take into whether they're going to finish early or use wrestling, control time, takedowns, possibly get a knockdown or two. That way you can hit at least over 120 points on any of those. But again, not my favorite and not fights that we're going to target in this video. So for fight number one, we're going with the big boys, the light heavyweight, Johnny Walker versus Magomed Ankalaev. This fight is going to be fireworks because if you have seen their media day, Johnny Walker has taken a little bit of small stabs at Ankalaev's fighting style, his personality. He wants him to be more of a showman. So I'm thinking that he's looking to get him to get riled up and come into the fight a little bit emotional, you know, trade some swings here and there and possibly make it a dogfight. And that's what Johnny Walker wants. So Johnny Walker is way down here at 7,100. If we open up his fighter profile here, what I like to look at is the last three fights. Usually, I mean, these two losses that come down here in the fourth and fifth fight, to Jamal Hill, the champ, and to Thiago Santos, which is a very close fight there. The salary is what is intriguing for me because, as you see here, 7,400, 7,200, 7,600, and 8,200 in this last outing with Myth. With that fight was it was a little weird to say the least. But again, he's 7,100 this weekend against Ankalaev. What is his path to victory? Obviously, is to land something big. He's a wild fighter. He likes to throw flying knees, spinning back elbows, back fist. So can he do that against Ankalaev? Can he get Ankalaev to fight emotionally, to trade in the pocket, and Johnny Walker find a spinning back fist or anything like that? Any power punch, any power kick. Not much of a kicker. I don't think he's going to come out and kick because he doesn't want to get taken down by Ankalaev. But big thing is when he did get taken down by Kuchelaba here. I know we can't compare Kuchelaba to Ankalaev, but when he did get taken down, he immediately looked for the sub. Can he do that against Ankalaev? And at 7,100, you're going to want to see him score around, especially over 70 points if you want him to win outright. But if he catches Ankalaev early with a knockout submission, or if he wins outright, I do think he scores above 80 points. And at this salary, when you want to get as much as a small salary, fighters in your lineup, I believe he's going to pay off. On the other hand, if you're on the Ankalaev side, he's way up here at 8,900. There are other options that you can look at, but the reason why we want to target this fight is because if Ankalaev can come out and establish dominance, not fight with a brawl style against Johnny Walker, I do believe he can make this fight look easy. He can make this fight look like he just doesn't belong with Johnny Walker, control him, land some ground and pound, and he has heavy ground and pound. The one thing that I forgot to mention about Johnny Walker, we did see Blachowicz completely tear both of Ankalaev's legs in his last fight. So again, I did say that Johnny Walker might be hesitant to throwing the leg kicks because he doesn't want to get taken down, but it'd be a good game plan to go against his legs. You know, one leg kick that hurts is going to remind him of the last fight and might cause him to fight wildly like Johnny Walker wants him to. But we've seen his fights mostly go to decision, as you can see here. Last 5 fights, 4 of them went to decision. But what's interesting to me is the control time. If he can do this to Johnny Walker, this is nothing but DraftKings points. Control time is very crucial for DraftKings points, especially if he's racking up takedowns, if he's racking up significant strikes. Those points can go up to above 80 for sure in a win. But at 9,100 for Ankalaev, you're looking for him to pay off over 110, over 115 points, which he has not gone over in his last 5 fights. Will this be the one where he shows off, maybe land a takedown himself and look for the sub himself for against Johnny Walker? Personally, I don't think he will. I am on him to win the fight outright. I just think he has more paths to victory. But the reason we want to target this fight is because Johnny Walker will be a popular underdog, in my opinion. He will be in most of people's lineups, especially way down there at 7,100. But he's way down there at 7,100 for a reason. Magomed Ankalaev, in my opinion, defeated Blachowicz in his last fight. He should be the champion for the light heavyweight division. But if we're looking at DraftKings points, DraftKings salary, with Johnny Walker in your lineup makes a lot work. And especially if he can take it to decision, which Ankalaev's 4 of his last 5 fights have gone to, then you're looking at Johnny Walker to score in a loss around 30 to 40 points, maybe a knockdown, maybe a takedown here or there. But this is really a good fight to target. In my opinion, I'll take the savings on Johnny Walker, but be mindful that he can get caught early in a knockout by Ankalaev. You know, he starts swinging wildly. Ankalaev puts him against the cage, drops him with a few knees, elbows, punches in the clinch, and we can see him score over 80 to 100 points. At that salary, don't think it'll be enough. Again, his average fight points per fight is 89.5, and at 9,100, that's just not going to work. It is a safe win, in my opinion, if you want to put him in there in cash games, just so you can accumulate 80 to 100 points if that's what you're looking to get out of him. There's other spots to go as big favorites. Give me Johnny Walker to be in one of the underdogs to win this Saturday. I do believe he has a path to victory, especially way down there at 7,100. All right, guys, for fight number 2, we won't get too much into this fight because it's a late notice replacement, a weight class above for him. And I know you guys know who I'm talking about. And this is the Kamaru Usman versus Khamzat Chimaev fight. Kamaru Usman, let's look at his fighter profile first. So he's way down here at 7,300. He's an underdog. He's never been at this salary, so that's a big eye-opener for everybody. If you look at his fight points per fight, 117.2 average. At 7,300, if he scores anywhere near that, you'll see that he's definitely going to be in those top lineups. But he's coming off 2 losses against a welterweight at high salaries, at fairly average points for that salary, actually way below average points at that salary. So what's interesting here is he's moving up a weight class. It's a late notice replacement. How will his knees hold up? There is that narrative that he's coming into this fight injured. He's coming in for a paycheck. I don't listen to those things because fighters, just like Kamaru Usman said, fighters fight, and nobody's going to go in there to take the Dylan Dennis route. And I'm so sorry I mentioned Dylan Dennis in this video, but it's just, I want to paint a picture for you guys. Nobody's going in there to just go in there for a paycheck, get beat up, not throw anything. You know, he's coming in here. He knows it's a big opportunity for him, moving up a weight class and potentially be a #1 contender to challenge for the title. There's a lot at stake here. Again, there is that narrative that he has no knees anymore. His knees have been bad for the past fights. Will you believe that? Will you go into that narrative? Then you definitely don't want to touch Kamaru Usman, because on the other side here against Khamzat Chimaev, very, very disrespectful salary, in my opinion. He's 8,900. And again, he was supposed to fight Paulo Costa, which maybe that's what happened with the salary. It was a little bit of a more, I would say, equal fight, or closer to the equal fight, both in the same weight class. Costa is a strong 185er here, but nevertheless, he's still 8,900. His fight points per fight, 115.7. And as you can see, his last 5 fights all ended. 4 of his last 5 fights ended in the first round. Burns, the only one to take him to a decision. But I believe he was caught up in the hype in that fight. I believe he didn't want to look for that control time. Maybe he was scared of Gilbert Burns' jiu-jitsu. I don't know, but he just came out and started swinging, started throwing hands recklessly, even got caught himself. So at 9,600, 9,400, and 9,500 in his last 3 fights, we're getting a discount on him at 8,900. In my opinion, you want to be on this side of the fight. You want to be on Khamzat's side of the fight. Why? Because there's no reason to fade him. Even against Burns, if you had faded him, he did score 101 points at 9,400. You are looking for him to score a little bit higher than that. But even in a decision where he had only 2 takedowns and 1 knockdown, against Kamaru, I do believe Khamzat is going to want to prove he's the better wrestler, especially coming out with these narratives that Bo Nickel thinks that his wrestling is absolute trash. I think Khamzat is going to want to send a message to the middleweight division. So give me Khamzat Chimaev to get the win. Again, we don't want to get too much into this fight. If Kamaru can make it a dogfight like Burns did, but at his age, with injuries lingering around him, coming off 2 losses, late notice replacement, coming up a weight class, give me Khamzat Chimaev at 8,900. Look for him to score over 100 points if he gets the win easily, whether it's decision, knockout, submission. So give me Khamzat Chimaev at 8,900 to be in your top of your lineups. Without further ado, let's get into fight number 3. So for fight number 3, we're going to get to the main event of UFC 294. Now, we've seen the underdog winning in the 3 last events for UFC. Can it happen again? Personally, I hope not. I am a huge fan of Islam. Don't get me wrong, I do love Alexander Volkanovski, but when he beat up on Yair Rodriguez, one of my favorite fighters, it doesn't sit well with me. So I'm looking for Islam to get a little bit of payback there, as bad as that sounds. But let's get right into this fight here. Alexander Volkanovski, fairly priced in my opinion at 7,500. His fight points per fight is 108.8. Again, against Rodriguez, he beat on him pretty bad at 9,200. He scored 136 points. You know, just 7 complete domination, control time, over around a control time, almost 150 strikes, 66 significant strikes, 7 takedowns. Man, that is complete domination by Volk. And I think he wanted to do that because after losing Makhachev, he was really looking to put a stamp on in his division, because there was a lot of chatter about him staying at 155. And possibly if he would have won, maybe we would still see him at 155 and not come back down to featherweight. But he went back there, beat up on the interim champ, and just, put a stamp on that division. So moving on to this fight, again, the salary is what works here. There is that narrative of the underdogs coming out on top for the UFC main event. But again, same narrative as the co-main event. We do have a late notice replacement coming off for surgery. and in away territory, not in home court advantage as he did back in February against Makhachev in a decision loss, which most people thought he won that fight. And against Makhachev, he was 6,700. They raised his salary almost 100. I mean, almost 1,000 here for the rematch. I just don't see this kind of performance again from Alexander Volkanovski. We'll get into the Islam side, but again, it was a late notice replacement coming off a injury. Can he score anywhere close to 60 points at that salary? It's not going to be enough to get you to the top of those lineups. You're looking for him to win the fight outright at this point, because even if he scores about 80 points, I do believe other fighters have a better ceiling at around this price tag, especially if Johnny Walker ends up winning, as the fight that we were talking about earlier. If he ends up winning, then definitely putting Volkanovski in your lineups is not gonna work unless he wins outright. And if you guys have a strong take on this, if you guys are a believer in Volk, in the underdog, in a straight streak of the underdogs being on top in the main event, then you definitely want to look at Alexander Volkanovski. At 7,500 makes a lot of your lineups work. Again, in my opinion, just for him, if he was around 6,700 as he was back in February against Makhachev, I'm all in on Volkanovski. But this raise in salary, I just think it's a little much. In my opinion, he should have been in the 7,000, maybe 7,100 range. But they did put him up almost 1,000 from his last fights against Makhachev. Even if it goes a decision, I don't see him scoring 60 points. I could be wrong. I just don't see him scoring 60 points. And again, at that salary, I just think you can look at elsewhere for those points. So let's get right into the Islam side here. Again, if you have a strong take on this, put him in your lineups. He is going to have 5 rounds to work with. If he can possibly win 3 out of those 2, then you're looking at him to score anywhere from 80 to 100 points, unless he finishes Islam, which I don't think it's possible. But again, if you have a strong take on it, put him in there. Don't even think about it. At 7,500, he makes a lot of your lineups work. So moving on to the other side of the fight here. And the reason I like Islam Makhachev is because he's 8,700 salary. Again, his last fight, he was 9,500, and they pretty much almost went down 1,000. So they're on the other side of this with Volkanovski here. And if he scores anywhere around the same 94 to 105 points at 8,700, then that's what you're looking for from Islam. In my opinion, I think he's going to be a lot more centered, focused in this fight. There was a narrative of him being in Australia fighting in away court advantage, if you believe into those things. Now fighting in Abu Dhabi in front of his home crowd, having Khabib back in his training camp. I'm not sure if he's going to be in his corner, but having him back in the training camp. And my thing was, it's kind of like, I think about it in my perspective. When my boss isn't around, when he takes a day off of work, I tend to slack a little bit. I think everybody does that. When he's not looking, just take it easy, kind of a take it easy day. You're still doing your job, you're still doing your work, but you're not as centered. So I feel like that's what happened with Islam. Khabib wasn't there. He kind of had that narrative that Volkanovski was going to be too small, not as strong as him, and took him lightly. But just like Volkanovski went back and put a stamp on his division, I do think Islam is going to do the same thing in this fight outcome here. I do believe he's going to look to dominate Volkanovski, not let Volkanovski get any sort of momentum. And again, in home court advantage, getting Khabib back in your training camp, everything is pointing towards Islam to get a dominant win, putting a stamp back in the lightweight division, putting order back in the lightweight division, and having a full training camp, not having a late notice replacement, have Volkanovski coming off of surgery. And the biggest factor here, dropping Islam's salary 80 to 8,700. Again, he was supposed to fight Oliveira, so there could be that narrative there. But give me Islam to win. I do like him to win inside the distance as well. I do think he's going to put a stamp on Volkanovski. Again, just everything pointing towards him. having the advantage, home court, full training camp, could be back in your training camp. So give me Islam to win and score anywhere around 110 points. Around that is what I'm looking at for him to score at this salary. And I'll see you guys at the top of those lineups. So there you have it, guys. 3 fights that we're targeting for UFC 294, DraftKings DFS MMA. Again, if you guys have not tried DraftKings DFS, it's very, very fun. It's way different than betting, because here, even if your underdog loses, but he still scores well, he still puts up a good fight, then you still have a chance to be atop of those lineups and win some extra cash there. So we look at our 3 picks. Again, you guys want to mix and match these, but these are fights that I'm targeting personally. So if you're looking at Walker to win, you're putting him in your lineups that already has an average remaining salary of 8,500 around there. So let's say you're on the Hamzat Chimaev end here, and then let's say you're on Volkanovski's side, right? So you go back down and choose Volkanovski at 7,500. That leaves you with 8,800 remaining salary players. So then now you can mix and match here, whether you're on the Nurmagomedov side. On the Magomedov side, you believe he's a big prospect here. He puts you over 100 points at that salary. You want him in your lineups. Or if you want to come up here, Basharat, get an easy win for him. Well, not easy win, but you pretty much have a heavy favorite at 9,400. Look for him to score anywhere around 80. My opinion, spend up options in this fight card is not good. I think the highest I would look to go is Dudikova here, but again, not interested in that fight. Again, Magomed Ankalaev, if you take Walker out and you want Magomed Ankalaev in your lineups, then that still leaves you a good amount of remaining salary. So you'd be looking at targeting at any other underdog here. I know Tim Elliott is a popular underdog this weekend, and he can definitely pay off at 6,600. He can definitely pay off his salary, even in the loss. Again, if you guys are on the Kamaru Usman side, if you believe that Magomedov is a fraud and Bruno Silva is going to come out and knock him out at 7,600, that makes a lot of your lineups work. So just target these fights here. If you guys have any other fights that you're targeting other than the ones that I picked here, please leave them down in the comments below. So again, like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel at Tulio Studios Presents, so we can keep making these videos for future events. There's so many events coming up that I'm so looking forward to. And it starts with UFC 294. UFC 294 early on Saturday. If you guys want to catch any of my lives before the fights, usually Thursday or Friday, it will be on Twitch at Silo Studios Presents, YouTube at Silo Studios Presents, and lastly, Instagram at Silo Studios Presents. That's where we can talk about it on the daily, go back and forth, look at the line movement. And nevertheless, for DraftKings, I'm playing every single week. So again, guys, these are the 3 fights that we're going to target for UFC 294. Whether you're on the underdog side or on the favorite side, that still leaves you with a good amount of salary remaining. So if you guys are agreeing with my picks, or if you guys want to target some different fights in this fight card, let me know down in the comments. Again, this is your boy CeeLo, and I will see you guys at the top of the lineups. Peace.